Hello. In this presentation, we're going to look at writing skills and preparing for university study. We'll reflect on our literacy and numeracy skills and think about how to organise our time to do our assignments effectively and efficiently. We look at these ideas because it's important as a student, as a scientist, and as a member of society to be able to communicate clearly. We also need to have adequate literacy and numeracy skills as professionals. It's one of the graduate learning outcomes of our university and affects your credibility academically and professionally. So here's a quote from influential business author in the US, Arnold Glasgow, and it says, "Success is simple, do what's right at the right way at the right time." And it's an interesting quote, basically meaning that you need to know what is required of a task and complete that properly using the correct procedures and on time. Relating that to an assessment task means that you need to be able to understand the task itself, what's required of you, that you complete it correctly, use the correct academic techniques such as academic writing and referencing, and be able to submit it on time. Now my team, the academic skills team, can help you understand this process. This presentation will help you understand the importance of time management and priorities. It will also help you get started thinking about your first assessment task in doing the BKSB. So these are the things that we believe are what it takes to be successful at university. We'll touch on these throughout the presentation. So first of all, motivation. Reflecting on issues helps you analyse, consider what you need to do in the future to succeed. Basically, you can't visualise a successful future without thinking about where you are today. So I'd like you to first identify a few things. It might be that you write them down on a piece of paper, and in a little bit you could pause the video and do that. I want you to ask yourself the question, what motivated me to start studying? Ask yourself why you're here, what are your goals, and record those down and how this course will make a difference to you. Where would you like to be when you graduate? Where do you want your education to take you? Why are you working so hard to achieve blank? What is it that you want to try and achieve in doing this in this course? So write these things down and keep these goals in mind. So writing this down and keeping it at the forefront, so you could keep it in your study area, helps you when things aren't as, when you're not as pumped at the beginning of the session that you might otherwise be. It's a good motivator, especially if there's a time when you're not enjoying it as much anymore, or you don't do as well in an assignment as you would like to. You can use that motivation to help you to keep on task, and use those looking back on those goals and remind yourself why you are here, why this course is important to you, whether that's for career purposes, to remain employable or to advance your career, to start a career, or if you're interested in advancing your knowledge too, your understanding about different ideas and concepts. Know these things and use them when you need to. Preparation and organisation is another important trait that we've identified. It's essential. Preparing for study can be difficult, so we need to have what we call a holistic approach, an approach that encompasses all areas of your life. Preparing your workspace is important, so whether you have an office or a desk, somewhere you can go to study in peace, or do you study in the kitchen while dinner is being cooked, or study in the car? Your study environment can affect how you perceive a task and can make your learning more effective if you're in the right space. You might like to be in a clutter-free space, or it might be that it suits you to be surrounded by your books and notes and that kind of thing. So work out how you like to study and then prepare your working space. Generally, we don't recommend you study in a high traffic area such as a kitchen or lounge room from the television. Avoid that kind of environment. A nice quiet area is best. It could be that you study in the library. You could find a nice spot to be able to get into your study, into your work, making sure that you have everything that you need. Also, make sure that you prepare your relationships, prepare your family and friends, and let them know what you're going through and what you're going to be studying. Prepare them by communicating with them. Prepare yourself so that you can meet the expectations that you have on yourself and also your obligations with work, family and other commitments. You can't give up everything just to study, so you will need to prepare your life, your surrounding environment to be able to study well. Being organised is the key to success at university. The academic skills team have resources that can help you get organised and make a plan for study and assignment preparation to help you stay on top of your due dates. Not a silver bullet, you still need to do the work, but these resources can help you in your schedule to be able to do that work and be accountable to yourself. So while trying to be organised, you need to consider the longer term as well as the short term aspects of your life. So we've got some resources that can help you get into good study habits from the beginning, both a session planner and a weekly planner. Okay, so for starters, we've got this long-term planning, and this is good to have a big picture view of the session ahead. So you could use the session planner that we've got available as a resource, or any planning tool that allows you to have that overall, where you can see it and it reminds you of what you've got coming up. It's good to have, but it's also the process of going through and writing down your tasks in one place is a process that also is helpful as well. It helps you get your head around it and that you can stay on top of what assessment tasks that you have got to complete and when. So fill that out and have it displayed in your study area so that you can see at a glance what is ahead of you, what you need to plan for, that kind of thing. The way to do it is write in your due dates and count back a few weeks depending on how substantial a task it is, the weight of the assessment task, and write in your start date as well. So this is an example of what an effective study session planner could look like. We've got the blank ones on as a resource as well available to you. You could use colours like this one, so that might help you keep your subjects separate from each other. And this particular planner is set out for 4 subjects, but you can adapt it yourself if you're studying part-time. So if you haven't used any of these type of resources before, this is a good time to start your initial part of your degree, and those good habits will serve you well throughout your course, but also good time management in your general day-to-day life as well. So look closely at your subject outline for your assessment task. I'll grab that from your Interact 2 page as well. And we'll look at how to analyse an assessment task in a later presentation. These are the things that you'll need to consider. But to start with, your first task is the BKSB. BKSB stands for the Basic Key Skills Builder. And it's an online English and Maths test with 3 parts. You only have to do the first part for your assessment, but you have to do it for both English and Maths. It's called the initial assessment. The initial assessment is the part of your assessment. You have access to the diagnostic and the learning modules, but they are just available to you if you would like to learn more about your own literacy and numeracy skills. The required part, your assessment task, is the initial assessment. So an early identifier. This type of assessment is called an early identifier, and its purpose is so that you can know yourself better. And why do we include this type of task at university? It's so that you're able to understand where your foundational literacy and numeracy skills are at, and whether you need to work at them to be able to study successfully here. How do we do this? How do you do your BKSB, you've got a link in your subject materials for your assessment task. The link's there as well. But make sure you read them carefully at the instructions. Login information is your student number, not your CHSTER login. And so that's why I've got that big arrow there. The initial password is the word password. After your first login, you'll then be prompted to change that. If you need assistance, we've also got our team looking at that BKSB email address as well. So you'll need to click on the English and Maths, and then to do the initial assessment and then you'll get a result for your initial assessment. Usually it takes about an hour for each, the English and the Maths, depending on how fast you do it, obviously. You don't have to do the diagnostic, but I've just got an example there to show you what it would look like if you wanted the results from that. You can do that if you want to find out more about where your skills or not lie, whether it's something that you have problems with comma usage or something like that. You can do that diagnostic test to find out more. And the learning modules relate to where you need to improve your skills as well. So let's look now at the weekly study planner, and it focuses on your shorter term habits. It helps you break down that full session big picture into achievable chunks that you can tick off daily and weekly. So again, any form of planning tool that works well for you could be used here. But the important thing to know is that it works for you and that you actually use it. The weekly planner should include all aspects of your life. So that could be your work, family, recreation commitments. And of course, life happens and plans change. Don't drop your bundle if you miss one of your planned study session. Just reschedule it into your plan and do the best you can to stay on task and on track to achieving your goals and to seeing what you've got to do in your subject outline. As well as a paper version, like you could print something like this out. You could use a calendar on your phone, set reminders to help you stay on top of your due dates. Another thing to consider is that scientific studies have shown that your peak brain activity is around 40 minutes after sitting down at your desk, and then your effectiveness drops. So it's a good idea to have a quick break every hour or so. And also knowing yourself again is helpful. So do you work best early in the morning? Do you like it when everyone else has gone to bed and you're able to work while everyone else is asleep, or work what works in your own life and work what works best for you in terms of your learning capacity. A different one there. So this is something that you need to obviously plan your life around. You will have work and family commitments, but you also got to factor in things like sleeping, eating, social time. And think about if full-time study is the equivalent, full-time work, 35, 40 hours a week, your study time, whatever it is, what mode that you are doing, needs to reflect that. So around 8 to 10 hours per subject per week is sort of what you need to be aiming for in terms of a time commitment. So the academic skills team, where I'm from, are here to support you every step of the way through your degree. And you've got a few different resources to access. You can submit your assignment for review to get feedback before you submit for final marking. You can have appointments with an academic skills advisor via Zoom, email and phone. And when restrictions are no longer applicable, you can make it a face-to-face appointment with an advisor on campus as well. Okay, so you've got I think it's 5 of both the assignment feedback service and the appointments available to you as students. They're free. You might also like to know that the assignment feedback service is fairly quick. You will get your assignment back within 24 hours. It might be things that you like to focus on in an appointment, like academic writing. You could look at the feedback that you get from an assignment feedback review, as well as things like academic writing style, referencing. So know that we are here for you in terms of those sorts of needs. We also have other skill building workshops that you can join, and you can look at the ones that are recordings, but also we've got them live and interactive as well. There on the website, we provide a discussion forum called Ask Academic Skills, and it's moderated every day, including weekends. We've got many other study resources as well. You can find them through the student portal. Got orange around where you can find them on the student portal, and also on the Study Success tab in Interact 2. In AHT101, we'll consider some of these ideas this session. And so these are the things that we're going to think about, but you can also explore those further in the different generic resources that Academic Skills have available to you. Active learning is one of the most important skills a student can use. Active learning means you do more than just listen or receive information by reading as well. An active learner participates and conducts activities linked to their subject. They actively think and reflect on their learning and subject content, reflect on what they are doing, integrating that learning into their everyday lives, by not just reading and writing, but discussing, watching related videos, making those connections, being involved and engaged in solving problems. Working out the way you best learn will also be useful to you for the entirety of your course. You could register for our workshop called Effective Learning and Memorising Workshop. That could be something that helps you improve those skills as well. Making connections involves establishing social and professional relationships in relation to your learning. Speaking with other people allows you to make connections with your own prior knowledge and experience, and also helps you with connecting theory to practice and comparing and contrasting ideas that you might find in your reading, different points of view. So in relation to your studies, that involves active learning, but also keeping you motivated by engaging with people and the subject content particularly. You become a better student and professional when you're discussing the ideas in your lectures, asking those questions, getting examples, pursuing further information, that kind of thing. You can also make connections with the academic skills team, take advantage of the services to improve your skills. Other connections you can make are towards the careers team, tell you what sorts of things that you need to do to get the career that you're after, what sorts of things might you need to consider, what sorts of things might you be best suited to in the workforce and that kind of thing. And also connect with external support services as well. Just so you know that because studying in isolation can be hard, it's important to make the effort towards those connections, even if it's just in the subject forum or online meetings. It's well worth the effort for those different reasons, for the active learning aspects and the motivation of engagement and learning with other people. So persistence is also important. We need to understand the process, what we need to do, but then just keep going, one foot in front of the other. So make sure that if you do, however, have obstacles that get in the way of your study, like misadventure, that you contact your lecturer earlier rather than later. Academic writing at university usually involves a whole range of different things, so find that support and then just keep on going at it and working out what you can do with that. At university, Writing usually involves weighing up information and ideas. In fact, the word essay comes from the word exegeum in Latin, which means to weigh. At university, we weigh ideas. To discuss, again, means to weigh up ideas, but to consider an issue or idea from more than one viewpoint or perspective. So there are a variety of different considerations that you might need to make. So for example, in agricultural science, you might need to consider animal welfare, land management, economics, sustainability, ethics, the common good. Your understanding will come from weighing those ideas up and then coming to a conclusion about your particular perspective. It's an educated perspective, but your opinion on how you might approach that as well. At university, your written work may involve narrating, describing, explaining, and persuading. So there's different aspects that you will need to be able to do to communicating effectively. It might involve a range of different things. So that's what you'll need to do in your studies. But professionally, you might need to do those things as well. So the parts of your course that require you to do this, that help you understand the content, but also provide you with practice in skills that will serve you well for your future more generally as well. Your writing, your communication needs to be clear, concise, and unambiguous. That can obviously have implications when you include that writing that's not in your assessment task, but also professionally in the future as well. You need to be able to make sure that your listeners and your readers don't have to struggle with understanding the information that you're trying to present. So let's look at informal and formal writing style now. The spectrum of text from spoken to written requires a move from informal to more formal styles. It also involves a change from action to reflection, and also a change from the specific to more generalised forms. It might depend on the type of assessment task that you are doing, where that might come, the purpose, whether you're thinking about a process in terms of methodology or drawing from that process then abstract ideas. But these are things that we need to consider in our academic writing. Academic writing tends to be generally on the more formal mode of continuum, on that continuum that tends to be written context independent, so you don't have someone just pointing at something and doing something so you know what they're talking about. It's generally objective, abstract and concise. So we need to choose vocabulary and grammatical structures that are consistent with formal usage. So at its most basic form, a sentence can be a single clause. It includes a verb, a doing word such as ate, or a being word such as is or are, and that's in orange in that example there. It will also have either a subject, that is the person or thing doing the action of the word, or something that suffers the action of the verb. So this is the most common simple sentence construction in English. It's active in this case. Subject, verb, object, or we ate lunch. Ate is the verb. We are the active participants of the eating, and the lunch is having the verb suffered. So we can also build on this simple sentence construction by adding to the noun group. The noun group is also sometimes called the nominal group, and you can see in this particular example that the object is optional. The sentence can still make sense without an object. We can still say the people in my class were eating, and that would make sense and be complete as a sentence in and of itself. We can also add a group that gives more information about where, when, or how the event took place, an adverbial, so a word that describes a verb. So for example, yesterday, or in the cafeteria, or noisily, they're words that describe a noun or a noun group. We can also think about clauses in the sentence by looking at the verbs. Again, they're in orange. You can join more than one clause together by using conjunctions. These joining words are things like words like because and. Conjunction can join two independent clauses together. So independent clauses, those are simple sentences that can be independent on their own as sentences if they would like to be, but they can also be joined together to provide a compound sentence and with those conjunctions, join them together. Or, like the bottom example, it could contain a dependent clause. So by sending less waste to landfill, it's not a complete idea, it's a dependent clause. We then follow that with a comma and then an independent clause. It needs that independent clause to be able to make meaning. We can build groups in the sentence as well. Noun groups tell us who or what is involved. Verb groups, the middle column there, tell us the action or the relationship between things. Adverbials tell us where, when, how, why the action occurred, and they're the most flexible in terms of where you can put them. We can add information to the noun group, shown in the orange text there. We could put information before the noun, as in an article. We'll learn about that in a little bit, or what an article is, and an adjective. An adjective is a word that describes a noun. We could also put information after the noun, and this allows more precise and factual detail to be included. You can also change the order of information by using the passive voice, and that's the bottom example there. And this allows us to choose the focus of the sentence. So the idea at the beginning of that sentence is reversed from the sentence previous to that. When noun groups get fuller and longer, just as a warning though, we can sometimes lose track of the meaning and errors in subject-verb agreement can occur. Let's look at nominalisation now, and that means changing verbs or other types of words into nouns. These can make the writing more formal and sometimes more concise as well. And it can also be another tool to change words in paraphrasing information. So in making nouns, we can do that. You've got some activities coming up in the tutorial about that one. But here we can look at how to use nominalisation. We can use the verb to reduce into reduction. Different ways of writing the same kind of ideas. We could change students behaved badly. The teachers responded by disciplining them, to poor student behaviour led to disciplinary responses. In that case, it's a bit more formal and more concise. When we are proofreading, there are a few things with which we need to take care, and this includes sentence fragments, which are incomplete sentences really. They are pieces of sentence that have become disconnected from the main clause, and run-on sentences. They are compound sentences which are not being punctuated correctly. So it could be that we've got comma splice, we've got a comma in there, which that's not really sufficient to join those independent clauses together. So we need a conjunction or to put in a semicolon. There are things that we need to look at, but now let's look at making our verb and subject agree. So here we've got examples of what to do, what kind of verbs that you are using for first, second and third person, whether it's a plural or not. But we also need to consider about plurals that are not just pronouns. So if your subject is a plural, like the boys, the verb could be walk. But if your subject is singular, there's one boy, if you had the boy, then you would add an S to the verb. So the boy walks, or the boys walk. So there's those differences between them depending on whether or not the subject is a plural. Let's look at active voice now. So when the subject of a verb performs the action spoken of by the verb is said to be in the active voice. Passive voice, on the other hand, is when the subject of the verb suffers the action spoken of by the verb. Articles. Okay, so this is something that you might like to consider, particularly if English is not your first language. It won't necessarily come as easily to you. So you will need to use either an indefinite article, a or an, or a definite article to be able to look at uncountable nouns. So an example of this is we don't say I went to hospital for my treatment. We need to give hospital an article. I went to the hospital for my treatment. I went to a hospital for my treatment. I went to Orange-based hospital for my treatment. Okay, so we need to, for countable nouns, we need to include an article when they are used in the singular. So there is some tips about using articles, and they're not used in these particular circumstances as well. Okay, let's look at apostrophes now. This is a bugbear for lots of pedants around the place. There are two reasons we use apostrophes: to show possession or a contraction. So here's an example of an apostrophe showing ownership or possession. We place the apostrophe after the boy. If the ownership was by plural, by multiple boys, then the apostrophe would go after the S. But we do not just put an apostrophe in if we've got a plural. It's only if it's also a possessive, an ownership showing apostrophe. So we're only using apostrophes showing possession or ownership. Plurals, we put them in for different spots, depending if it's a singular or if there's more than one. But we don't just put them in if it's not a possessive. Likewise, we've got an apostrophe between children, and then we put apostrophe S in there. And the students. The students are the ones that own their reports, so we put them in that particular case as well. So let's look at commas now. They can be used in a way that's parenthetically. So that means in this example of Daniel, who plays cricket, we're putting it around the information as parentheses or brackets to show as an aside. You likely already know that we put them in a list as well. That's when we use commas. We use commas not for compound predicates there. I'll explain what that means though. If we've got this particular instance of he at the beginning of the first sentence there, he is both doing the verb accompanied and volunteered, so we're not splitting the two different things up there by putting a comma in between them. Because he both accompanied and volunteered, the verbs apply to he, they're not divided by a comma. Next one, in terms of comma usage, is for dependent clauses, and each of these sentences begins with a dependent clause. If you accept our conditions, comma, and then a dependent clause, something that can stand on our own. We need to follow that information with something that stands on its own and an independent clause, and we put that comma in to separate them. On the other hand, you do not need a comma if the dependent clause comes after the independent clause, if those were reversed. Sorry. So same ideas in the sentences there, but we've reversed the order of the dependent clause and the independent clause. We do not need to separate them in a comma, but if we've got the dependent clause to start with, comma, and then the independent clause to follow. We use a comma after an adverb at the start of a sentence. I've got some examples there. And we can also, another device we could use is a colon. A piece of punctuation is a colon. We can use a colon to precede a list or an explanation. We've got some examples there too. But we don't include a colon before such words as include or with. We already know that there is information to come that could potentially be a list, but we don't precede that particular type of list when it precedes an adverb. You can also use a semicolon to join simple sentences together, but we've got a list here, so we've got a comma to separate the lists of the different examples. I shall argue the following for preposition first, blah, 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 blah. It could be that you then divide those different first and the first reason, second and the second reason up with a semicolon. So it helps, it's more of a break than a comma, particularly if the list items are a bit more involved and they might even have their own commas there. So a semicolon, I've just shown one way of using it, that we are able to use that to break up a list that of more complex points. But I alluded to it a little bit already, that you can use it to join two simple sentences together to create a compound sentence. So those were the two simple sentences that we talked about. The independent clauses, you can put a semicolon in between them to make that a compound sentence. If you just put a comma, that is not enough. You need either that semicolon there or a conjunction like the because or the and to join them together. Comma is not enough. If you do that, that's a mistake. It's called a comma splice. So that's the example from before. In terms of a big long list, that's got a colon to start with, and the individual elements might include commas in them to describe them or give more information, but the items are divided up. It's got a semicolon in between each one. You'll also use them in referencing, but that's in another presentation that we'll be doing as well. We've got a range of different resources that can help you out. Depending on where your skills are at and what you would like to find out more information about, we've got these resources, but you'll also be talking about them in your tutorial, and you'll have access to the different resources here. But thanks for coming, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.